hemolysis. So that's the meaning when we say some may retain their activity at 37 degrees centigrade. So in this stage, there is no hemolysis. Upon exposure to cold, there is no hemolysis. But when the human body, because of course we don't want to stay all the time in cold exposures, we normally return back to our required body temperature. It is at this time when the antigen antibody interaction is finished off by the complement system, leading to the hemolysis of the red blood cell. Okay? Now, this is, they say, normally observed in people, especially when they are exposed to cold temperatures. Okay? No, if ever they are exposed to cold temperatures, it is normally the extremities that will begin to experience uh, the cold impact, okay, such that the extremities will immediately become bluish in color. Because during this stage, the red blood cell has begun to. So, if you're the person who has that type of symptomatology, what you will normally do is to really expose yourself to 37 degrees centigrade. And that's when the hemolysis will normally happen. Okay? So the blueness is actually because of the obstruction of your small capillary vessels in the skin because the blood flow has already been slowed down because of the agglutination reaction. I want to say stop because if it stops, then you die. Okay? There's still movement of the red blood cells, but the movement of the red blood cells is impeded because of the lattice formation or the agglutination formation between the red blood cell and the antibody to the cold uh, temperature type of reaction. Okay, so what are the implications? So it's really dependent on the human being. If after seeing that he is now having the Raynaud's phenomenon is a very rare but powerful cold reactive antibody that makes the cooler superficial parts of our vascular bed, such as those found in the fingers and toes, to become bluish. They become ischemic. Okay? So there is a blockage. A certain amount of blockage is created, leading to what we call as acral cyanosis. So acral meaning on the extremity. So because of this, if you leave this for a long time, then you will have vasospasm because your blood vessels is very very full and it's no longer allowing the blood to continue flowing. So what a person will normally do, because it's painful if you will have vasospasm, what the patient will normally do is to immediately look for ways in order for the blueness to go away, like soaking your fingers or hands or toes in a warm bath, maybe a 37 or higher warm bath, so that the cold reacting antibodies will no longer continue to agglutinate. Because remember, it is only going to agglutinate when the human anatomic part is exposed to uh, the cold temperature. So what's the sign? We have acrocyanosis, or the blueness of your extremity. So it could be, as I said, your finger, your toes, okay, even your ears, because they are usually the ones that will not be requiring 37 degrees centigrade maintenance if ever you are exposed to a cold temperature. Each time the human body, guys, enters an environment that is very cold, the human body will instinctively protect the vital organs first. So the warmth of the body will be really focused on the internal organs, and they won't care whether the superficial parts of the human body may be left cold. It's okay. You will not die. You will die, however, if your uh, vital organs are going to be cyanotic. That would never happen. That's why when exposing ourselves to cold environments, you will always feel the chill in your hands, in your nose, in your ears, or in your toes. Because the warmth of the body is centered towards the protection of our vital organs. Okay? So when you experience the Raynaud's phenomenon or acrocyanosis, all you need to do, guys, is just go back to exposing your body part to a warm temperature. Then that can be quickly reversed. Okay. However, if you are intense, if you are going to experience a stronger or greater intensity of cold agglutination reaction, then maybe in very rare cases you may report a severe type of hemagglutination due to this cold agglutinins. And this is a dangerous one if this will really be massive because it might lead to peripheral necrosis of your tissue. So, mamatay ang inyong tissue. So, what are the clinical significance, therefore, of studying cold agglutinin? So, first off, it will be good to study this because it is also said to be an indicator of a high titer of monoclonal cold agglutinin that has been associated with the B or plasma cell lymphoproliferative disorder, which includes your B cell chronic lymphocytic anemia, your B cell lymphoma, your Hodgkin's disease, or your Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia, as well as your systemic lupus erythematosus. Meaning, when one has any of this, okay, when one has any of these um, autoimmune disorder or tumor, it is possible for the body to create high titers of monoclonal antibodies. And well, this is going to be dangerous only if and only if the human body is exposed to cold temperature. Just remember, the beginning of this agglutination must start in cold environments. So if you have any of these type of diseases, then what you can always do is to see to it that you transfer locations. Let's say, for example, if you live in a temperate zone, uh, then if your place is having winter on these particular months, then it is advisable that you go to another state where there is no cold environment. Okay, let's say you can always go to Florida, for example, if in the US, because in Florida, it barely is going to snow. Okay? So, or you go to other areas of the world that is not going to expose you to the cold environment. Okay? Now, the second significance of studying for the appearance of cold agglutinin in our serum is because we want to establish whether we have the atypical type, the chronic cold agglutinin disease, or otherwise known as the chronic heme agglutinin disease. Okay, so this type of chronic cold antibody production seems to be the primary characteristic of a disease known as this one, the chronic cold agglutinin disease or the chronic hemagglutinin disease. We still do not know what is really the true etiology or the cause of this type of antibody production, but this is what they have found that most of the patients experiencing chronic hemagglutinin disorders are people who are already in the age beyond midlife. Okay, and this is normally responsible in this group of people for around 20% of autoimmune hemolytic anemia cases. So if you want to establish this, you can do or perform the cold agglutinin procedure. Okay? Another use of this, guys, is during open heart surgery. When you do an open heart surgery, if a person is known to be producing cold agglutinin antibodies, we normally are careful that the blood, which we transfer in a machine for the moment during the open heart surgery, will not be exposed to too much coldness because they will agglutinate. Okay, so during open heart surgery, while the doctor is manipulating the heart vessels or what, the blood is being pumped artificially for the meantime while the heart is being fixed in a machine. And normally the machine is exposed to cold temperatures. And so if ever your patient has cold agglutinin disease and it has been found out that you really have that, then they will do some mechanisms to avoid exposure of your red blood cells in cold environments so there will be no lattice or agglutination formation. Otherwise, when you return back the blood to this patient after the open heart surgery, then the patient will have difficulty this time with an unimpeded flow of blood when the heart begins to function again. Okay? So in cold agglutinin disease, because we have two types, now we have cold agglutinin, the chronic cold agglutinin disease, okay, as well as the monoclonal cold agglutinin disease. When we talk about the cold agglutinin disease, we always say that the cold agglutinin disease is the one due to a monoclonal antibody because of maybe a prior exposure to those levels in category 1, which include exposure to any of these types of diseases. Okay? So, uh, so technically, antibodies formed because of this exposure to these diseases are monoclonal, meaning they are single clone type, and they usually are either anti-I antibody or anti-small I antibody, but always of the IgM type. Okay? As we said, we still do not know what is the true cause. The syndrome is said still to be idiopathic or secondary to those lymphoproliferative disorders that we mentioned earlier. Okay? Hemolysis, because this is not a very, very common or severe type of disorder, hemolysis is just mild and self-limiting. Okay? And they have seen that exposure, most especially to Mycoplasma pneumoniae infection, will really show elevated titers of anti-I, big I, or anti-I, small I, IgM, compared to exposure with respiratory diseases, viral respiratory diseases like influenza A and adenovirus infection. So that's your cold ability. Now, what about this cold antibody-induced hemolytic anemia? This is the symptom that may result from exposure to cold agglutinin disease. Okay, so the cold antibody-induced hemolysis may be chronic or may be episodic. As I said, it depends on your exposure to the cold environments. But this is not so severe because the hemoglobin levels, even if you undergo hemolysis, will rarely fall below 8 or 9, which is the very, very, margin of hemoglobin values that may still allow the person to live, but not for a long time without blood transfusion. Okay, so they will really fall below 8 or 9 and often remain within normal range, so they don't actually need any treatment. Okay, so symptomatic cold autoimmune hemolytic anemia, although it is very rare, has also been associated with, apart from Mycoplasma pneumoniae, also another virus called the Epstein-Barr virus when a person gets infected and suffers the disease called infectious mononucleosis. So remember with Epstein-Barr virus infection, not all people will really enter into infectious mononucleosis disease production. There are some people, especially the little children, when they are exposed to Epstein-Barr virus, they don't really experience the disease called infectious mononucleosis. Rather, this type of disease is experienced by children who, even in the past, were never exposed to Epstein-Barr virus. Okay? We normally get exposed, guys, to the Epstein-Barr as a little child through the saliva. Okay? The saliva of a person that is infected with Epstein-Barr virus. So no, I will be discussing the Epstein-Barr virus next week, so we will be able to understand in detail what causes Epstein-Barr virus infection and how do we treat it, or how do we determine also the laboratory diagnosis to establish for infectious mononucleosis disease. Okay, but technically for now, suffice it for you to know that the anti-I antibodies have been particularly associated with Mycoplasma pneumonia infection or infectious mononucleosis infection. Okay? Now, as I said, because this is reversible, it is advised that when people are experiencing cold autoimmune hemolytic anemia, then they protect their bodies by wearing gloves or avoiding cold exposure or even moving to a warmer climate so that the disease will not become life-threatening for these people. Okay? Now, another disease has also been associated with cold. agglutinins, and this is called paroxysmal cold hemoglobinuria. Now, whereas the cold chronic agglutinin disease or the cold agglutinin disease has been associated with the IgM antibody of the I blood group system, big I or small letter I, paroxysmal cold hemoglobinuria is because of cold agglutinins that are IgG antibodies. And these IgG antibodies, just like your IgM, are actually reactive in the cold. It begins to be reactive in cold exposures, but they will finish off the reaction when they return back to normal, meaning hemolysis will ensue, will start when the person goes back to warmer temperatures. So at first there will be agglutination reaction during cold environmental exposures, but since humans' instinct is to go to a warmer environment, that is what our body is suited for, then the hemolysis will begin to occur. That's why we call this as a rare condition of autoimmune hemolytic anemia, whose cause is again quite idiopathic, meaning we have not yet zeroed in on what is the real cause. They just found in their studies that when you have been exposed to syphilis or some respiratory viral infection like measles, mumps, chickenpox, and infectious mononucleosis, one will normally develop antibodies, IgG antibodies, that may show a biphasic reaction. So, what do we mean by biphasic reaction? Biphasic because these antibodies have a dual thermal optimal activity. When are these activities going to occur? They will first agglutinate the red blood cells. Okay, when exposure to cold temperatures occur, the red blood cells will begin to agglutinate with these cold antibodies binding the complement, but it is only completed when the human body returns back to normal. Guys, we don't normally stay long in cold temps. That is an inherent instinct of man. We always go to the place where it's warm, wherein our body can be tolerating the environmental conditions. Okay, so when you have started the reaction and then you suddenly transfer to an area that is not as cold, the complement system continues to cascade, leading to lysis intravascularly. So your red blood cells will be lysed even while still it is in the bloodstream. You cannot wait anymore for the splenic macrophages to be the one to harvest them when they enter the spleen. Here, they are already precipitated. Okay? So the hemolysis in this stage uh, usually will result to a rapidly progressing anemia with hemoglobin components seen in the urine because of intravascular hemolysis. Okay? So to some, the hemolysis may be severe, producing hemoglobinemia as well as hemoglobinuria because there is intensive bleeding inside your blood vessel system upon exposure or return into the warm temperature. So why do we say this? Because as we said earlier, it has a biphasic reaction. It has a dual thermal reaction. In cold, you start the agglutination, but it is only at 37 that you begin to show the reaction. So see, hemolysis may be severe in these people, especially if the degree of agglutination is really against a lot of different blood cell systems. Okay? So these antibodies can actually be tested using direct anti-glutamate test. So you get whole blood. Okay, the whole blood will normally be containing the complement system of that particular person, and then you begin to process this sample by exposing it to warm temperature first and cold temperature to see if there is going to be hemolysis. Okay, so these antibodies, unlike your chronic agglutinin disease, is not associated to the I blood group, but rather to the P blood group system. So as I said, always bear in mind that the red cell surface do contain various types of antigens of the blood group. That is why, guys, when you do a section in the US for um, blood banking, if you're in charge in blood banking, and then you will do your cross matching and antibody typing, you will really need to type all the kinds of antibodies that is normally seen in a red blood cell surface. And that is not just going to include the ABO system as well as the RH system, but even other blood group components, which your teacher in hematology, immunohematology, will be dealing with later. So, uh, also, apart from showing cyanosis in your skin, you may also show intravascular hemolysis resulting to hemosiderin components in the urine or even iron deficiency anemia because your kidney keeps on compensating for the loss of the red blood cell. Okay? So, who normally will have this? The condition most often occurs as a transient disorder only in some children and younger adults. So, how do we do the test? Let's take a look at the test. The cold agglutination of red blood cells occur only in cold temperatures, meaning you need to expose it first to warm before for you to see the reaction. Okay, so what we normally do is we uh, collect the plasma portion of the blood because you need to wash the red blood cells. It's difficult to get serum because if you get serum, you cannot wash the red blood cells anymore because they become clotted. So you take an anticoagulated blood, you centrifuge it, you separate the sediment, the red blood cells, from the plasma. Okay? So the plasma is what we are going to use against our own red blood cells. So separate the plasma. Later on, we're going to use it and test it against our own red blood cell. So in the meantime, what do we do with the red blood cell? We need to be washing our own red blood cell to remove any protein that may have been attaching onto its surface. We will only allow the natural proteins of your red blood cell surface to be the ones in there. Okay? So if you mix your antibody, your own antibody to your own washed red blood cell, then the agglutinin, if ever there are cold agglutinins, is adsorbed onto the red cell surface. So when you say adsorb, guys, it's different from absorb. Adsorb means to let the agglutinin antibody, the cold agglutinin antibody, to just adsorb onto the surface of the cell. They will not be absorbed towards the cytoplasm of the cell. Okay? But you can only cause this to occur, guys, if you expose the blood to cold environments. Okay? Now, if you want to test whether indeed this is a true cold agglutination assay, expose it to a warm water bath at 37 degrees centigrade. Okay? The characteristic of our red blood cells, regardless of the ABO type group, okay, will normally show a reversal. Okay? Meaning, they will release back the red blood cells upon warming at 37 degrees centigrade. They will never lyse it. Okay? They will just release it back. But this is now indicating to us that indeed this is a true positive reaction for cold agglutinin because it can be resolved. Okay? If the cold agglutinin that you saw interacting in your laboratory was that of your exposure to uh, conditions of where that will warrant what we call this contamination, then the reaction will never be reversible. So true agglutinin antibody will normally show a reversible reaction when they are exposed to the warm temperatures. Okay, so what are these false causes that will demonstrate to us agglutination even upon exposure to 37? Because here in the other side here, if you agglutinated in cold, then test whether they will be return back by exposing your test tube with serum into 37 degrees centigrade environments. If it will return back to normal, then you are really talking about a cold agglutinin. But you can also see cold agglutination, guys, because of false reactions. Either you had an autoagglutination because the patient's serum has the capability of interacting with his own serum even at room temperature, not at home. They form lattices even at room temperature. Okay? Or pan-agglutination, when there is agglutination of the red blood cell, either due to bacterial action, known as the Hubener-Thompson-Frieden-Rich phenomenon. Okay, this one, the serum or the plasma has long been exposed to your uh, agents, bacterial agents, and this is called Hubener-Thompson-Frieden-Rich phenomenon. The third possibility for a false reaction is the rouleau formation or the piling up of the stock-like type of points in instances like hypergammaglobulinemia. So if you have this, it is always best to also run your erythrocyte sedimentation rate to determine which among the WBC, okay, has really, which among the red blood cell has really caused the pseudoagglutination. Is it the true cold agglutinin or is it just a false reaction with issue about rouleau formation because the patient happens to have hypergammaglobulinemia. That's why when you do this test, one of the essence of doing this test is to rule out systemic lupus erythematosus. Because what can normally consume, okay, reactants is when we produce different types of antibodies leading to a prozone reaction, and then you cannot examine anymore properly your true case of your patient because it had already undergone pseudoagglutination. So how do we prepare our specimen? You need to obtain 5 to 10 ml of blood from the patient, and then you separate the serum, the liquid component separated from the solid component. So this is why, guys, I said it is best to use an anticoagulated blood. You can use carbonized blood. You can use sodium citrated blood. You can use the EDTA blood. Uh, it will be okay because EDTA will just chelate the proteins, but necessarily chelate the red blood cells with its antibodies. So it's still all right. So get an anticoagulated blood, centrifuge it, and then separate the plasma from the red cells. You don't throw away the red cells. You see to it that the red blood cells are washed in 5 to 10 ml of normal saline solution at least 3 times. Okay, so you're just simply going to spin this for 1 minute, okay, at a very high radians per minute cycle in your rotor, just to separate the plasma from the normal saline solution. Okay, now wash 3 times. And the way we wash our normal saline solution is, the way we wash our red blood cells with normal saline solution is normally doing it 3 times. So what you normally do, guys, is just get your test tube with your red blood cells there. They are they're not clotted because you used an anticoagulated blood. You pour in your NSS up to the just leaving around 1/4 of your test tube area not to be filled with NSS. Cover it with a Nesco film and then shake it gently and then centrifuge it under high speed rotation for just 1 minute. So each time you do a centrifugation, guys, you are going to discard the supernatant which contains your NSS. Okay. You are only going to make a 1% red cell suspension from your own red cells after the third washing. So on the third washing, you throw away the NSS, and then this time your washed red blood cell must now be used to prepare for your 1% red cell suspension. So how do we prepare the red cell suspension. If you want to prepare a 1% red cell suspension, you obtain at least around 5 to 10 ml of blood and separate the fluid portion from the red blood cell. Okay, wash the red blood cell with 5 to 10 ml NSS 3 times, and on the third washing, begin to prepare your 1% red cell suspension. So you must know what or how much total volume you'll be required to prepare for if you want to do the test. Like for example, in this particular procedure, the content for every test tube is around 1 ml. Okay, so in order for you to make a 1 ml volume, and you have eight tubes to use, how much total ml of wash RBC suspension will we normally need? Okay, so you need to put into the test tube zero point 0.5 ml of NSS, I mean red cell suspension, because the total volume concentration seems to be 1. Okay, so what do you do? zero point 0.5 times 8, that will give you how much, guys? Can you please compute? What is zero point 0.5 times 8? 4 ml, 5 ml. 8 times 5, 40, right? So you might need around 4 ml. Therefore, I would prepare, guys, of just 4 ml with an allowance. So maybe you can prepare as like 10 ml in case you make an error. Okay? So let's say, for example, you want to make a 10 ml volume, then you can prepare for your red cell suspension preparation. So if you want to make a 10 ml volume, if you want to make a 10 ml volume, you obtain zero point 0.1 ml of red cells. Okay? Why do I know I need only zero point 0.1 ml of red cells? Because if you multiply the red cell suspension, which is called the red cells, the wash red cells, which is called the packed cell volume, times 100 divided by the desired concentration of 1%, your total volume will give you a value of 10 ml. So at least you are on the safe zone because you can now pipette without any fear of running out of a solution because you have 10. As per computed, you only need 4 ml. Okay? So if you already know that to prepare a 10 ml volume, you will require zero point 0.1 ml of red blood cell. The big question now is if I will put zero point 0.1 ml of red blood cell, how much diluent must I add? So the NSS volume to be added is equal to the total volume recreated minus the packed cell volume. So that will be 10 minus zero point 0.1, which we used here for the packed red cells. And that will give you a 9.9 ml of NSS. Okay? So you prepare the solution to your 1% red cell suspension, to your zero point 0.1 ml red cell suspension. Add to this 9.9 ml of normal saline solution. Okay? Mix it gently by inversion at least 3 times, and then you will now have your agglutination reaction. Okay. Remember in the procedure, it says here that you are going to prepare 8 test tubes in a rack, and you will label each of the test tubes accordingly, 1 down to number 8. Then to the first tube, you are instructed that you are only going to put zero point 0.5 ml of your uh, NSS, and to the zero point 0.5 ml of NSS, I mean, to the zero point 0.8 ml of NSS, you're going to add zero point 0.2 ml in the first test tube. So only in the first test tube will the NSS be zero point 0.8 and the serum zero point 0.2. Okay. If you will compute it, guys, if you will compute it, what is the dilution if you have zero point 0.2 of your serum and 8 ml of your diluent? So our working formula are these ones. We have our working formula. Total volume is equal to the serum volume plus the diluent volume for serial dilution. So total volume plus serial dilution volume. Okay? So if you have zero point 0.8 as zero point 0.2, what's the total volume?
0.10 po, ma'am.
Okay, zero point 0.1. If you have zero point 0.1, divide zero point 0.1 by your uh, test serum, zero point 0.2. Okay? Zero point 0.1 divided by your solute, how much is it? Zero point 0.1 divided by zero point 0.2. Ano,
Dili ang serum ang una, ma'am.
0.1. 0.8 plus zero point 0.2 is 1.0, right?
Ah, yes, ma'am.
Okay. 1.0 divided by zero point 0.2 pila. Total volume divided by solute volume. How much? 1 divided by zero point 0.2, guys. Hello? 1 divided by zero point 0.2, pila?
5, ma'am.
Ha?
1 divided by 0.2 po, ma'am.
1, total volume here is 1, divided by zero point 0.2, pila? 1 divided by 2, guys.
5,
5.
ma'am.
5. 5, right? But we said that if you use that formula, final dilution formula, dilution formula is total volume divided by solute volume, right? So total volume is 1 divided by solute volume 0.2. The answer is 5. Now, the dilution is said to be the reciprocal of your dilution factor. So that will be 1 is to 5. One part of your serum is to 5 parts of your diluent. So 1 is to 5. However, the procedure says in here that you only do that to the first test tube. The first test tube lang ang zero point 0.8 plus zero point 0.2. Then you are now instructed that you are going to prepare a serial twofold dilution by transferring zero point 0.5 ml of, of solution from tube number 1 to tube number 2 and so on. So we are going to do a serial dilution here. Now, how much are we going to put of NSS in this second tube? According to the procedure number 2, you're only going to put 0.8 ml of NSS to tube 1. But in all the succeeding tubes, starting from tube number 2 to tube number 8, you're only going to put 0.5 ml of NSS. Not zero point 0.8, but 0.5 ml of NSS. What will we do with the number 8? The number 8 test tube will act as our negative control. We are not going to put serum there. What we only will put will be our red dots. Will be our NSS. So to make the volume equal, the volume in here the volume to be added into this section is also zero point 0.5 ml of NSS. So meaning in yours test tube, number 1 has zero point 0.8 ml NSS, but 2 to number 8 has only 0.5 ml of NSS. So you can see that in this table, tradition. Okay? Now, what about the test serum? The test serum is to be taken in a serial manner. Okay? So what do you do? From tube number 1, which is a volume of 1.0, you get zero point 0.5 and transfer it to tube number 2. So see, zero point 0.5 ml is obtained from tube number 1. So if you illustrate that, mauni siya. Okay? So tube number 2, naaman siya 0.5 ml of NSS, di ba? For NSS, we're going to add 0.5 in all tubes from 2 to number 8. Hanggang doon sa dulo talaga. Hanggang forever. It's always going to be 0.5 ml of NSS. Now, from tube 1, you're asking now to prepare at 1 is to, the second tube, you get 0.5 ml and transfer it here. Okay. How much did we add of our NSS, guys? 0.5. How much did we add of the serum concentration here na diluted na is also zero point 0.5. So what's the total volume? 1. 1 divided by the solute, which is zero point 0.5, it will give you what, guys? Let's say dilution. 0.5 divided by, 1 divided by 0.5.
2, ma'am.
2. Unang ang initial dilution niya at the moment is 1:2. Now, remember that the source of our serum for tube number 2 came from tube number 1. That is why you have to compute for the final dilution. That's why in the formula for the final dilution is initial dilution times the previous dilution. So where is initial and where is previous dilution? So initially, sa pagkakaroon, your dilution is 1:2. That's for the now only. 1:2 is simply because total volume divided by solute volume. Okay? 2 ang inyong result sa dilution factor. Now, what you do now is make or multiply the final dilution. We say final dilution because the source of the serum was sourced out from another specimen, which has a prior dilution of 1. So what do? 1:2 times to 5, you multiply that, then you get a value of 1:10. 1:10. Pero, nibutang na po pa diri og 0.5 ml, namuha na po ka sa tube number 2. Transfer na po ni mo diri. Pila may nabilin diri sa tube number 1, guys? Pila i-balance? Kani. Pila akong gisulat?
0.5, ma'am.
0.5. Asa nagpikas 0.5 kasi ba total volume 1 man? Asa magpikas 0.5?
Sa third
I-add
tube,
to
ma'am.
sa next tube. Kani siya, kani akong tube number 1. Nga naman ang nabili niya, in this 1 siya, nga nabili niya 0.5 naman lang.
Naa sa tube number 2, ma'am, ang 0.5.
Correct. So sige kang balik-balik ug pangayo sa ilang uban, kinahanglang makabalo ka mo hatag og thank you. Always consider that the present story of your life was once upon a time related to the story of your past. Your past history allowed you to take in something from tube number 1 and transfer it to you for free. Okay? So if you want to create your final delusion, guys, look back from where you first belonged. And where you first belonged has actually a delusion already computed at 1:5 delusion. Okay? So, muna siya yung reason, guys, ano, nahimo ni siyang from 1:5, nahimo siyang 1:10, from 1:10, nahimo siyang 20, kaya ga twofold serial delusion man ta. Okay. Ang last na to nga tube is 8 tubes. Here in my exercise here, I'm using not 8 tubes, but I'm using 11 tubes. Meaning, from 1 to 10, dili po ito mga akong delusion. Very negative control ang tawag sa kanya. Right? So, di ba ni-add ko direct NSS kanina? Para negative control. Para mahimo ko siyang negative control, guys, the moment you are going to remove 0.5 ml from here, i-discard ra ng imong 0.5 ml. Ayaw siya ilabay diri sa sulod sa negative control. Discard it. Okay? Nga naman ako siya to discard so that ang volume na mo remain sa tube number 10, the remaining balance will still be 0.5. Right? Now, di ba naka-prepare naman sa ato ang red cell suspension kanina? We were making a red cell suspension. Ito siya ang atong red cell. We were making a red cell suspension a while ago. Here, you were making a 1% red cell suspension a while ago. What will we do with the red cell suspension? Kasi ganito yung tagiyaan ng red cell suspension, guys. Who owns the red cells?
Ang patient, ma'am,
The patient. You see, ang patient nga red cell imong gipakontra sa iyang kaugalingon nga serum or iyang kaugalingon nga plasma. Ngano man, because you are really determining now autoimmunity. Naaba ka antibody against your own red cells. Don't bother with the antibody of somebody else. It's not gonna be placed in your body anyway. Ang imong own antibody ang imong questionon. So ayaw mo kalimot ana guys ha. Ang source sa ato ang serum and source sa atong red cell is just the patient themselves. Okay? So, pag na itong dilution, naabot of 1 is 2,560 diri kay this is up to 10 tubes. Okay. From a total volume of 1 initially, the balance was always set at 0.5 because we did a twofold. Remember ang twofold dilution? Whatever is your amount of solute should also be the amount of your diluent. So you can have a twofold dilution. Okay? So, karon ni add tag washed red blood cells. So WRBC here means nahugasan na nako ako ang red blood cell. And ako na po siyang na-compute that it will just be 1%. The reason why, guys, kinahanglan yun mong magama o red cell suspension na computed yun the red cell suspension so that ang imong red cell concentration is really the real concentration required in the test. You know, when I was young, when I was just a student, like you in third year, our teacher never taught us how to make the suspension. Ang sultira sa among teacher is make a cherry red suspension. Yeah. So you will just be so subjective. Say, oh, it looks like cherry already. Maybe this is already all right. But technically, it is not to be prepared in a very subjective manner. Kinahanglan mag-compute yun ta. And I have given you now the formula on how to compute for a 1% red cell suspension. So kaning 1 diri guys, muna imong siging ilis-ilisan. Kaning 1 din kita. 5%, then make it 5. 2%, make this 2. Okay? So, you can do trial and error as to how much total volume you can make. But in this illustration, ang ako magong gidisar is 10 ml volume para dili ka mo ma run out of your suspension later on. Okay? So, naka-prepare na ta sa atong red cell suspension. You now add to all test tubes. Starting from tube 1 up to the negative control, you are going to add a red cell suspension. Okay? So, unsa may naa sa imong red cell, unsa may naa sa imong negative control, guys? Naa ba siya zero o wala?
Wala, ma'am.
Wala. Pero ang iyang total volume was still 0.5 kay imo man siyang gibutangan ganina og 0.5 ml nga NSS. Wala lang na siya nimo butang ni og serum kay ang serum diri sa tube number 10 ilabay man imo. Wala di mo gihatag niya. So black to siya diri. Okay. Therefore, balance ani niya sa iyo din siya guys. Please crush it out there no sa inyong website. Nakakaano kasi ako, naka-PDF kasi ako. Dapat wala dahil siya guys. Dapat ang total volume ani is 0.5. Kindly correct it. 0.5 rin siya. Okay? So, ang imuhang balance is 0.5 for all test tubes. You are going to add 0.5 ml of 1% solution to all tubes. Adani mo siya tanan og 0.5 ml. Okay, karon. You have created a new total volume. What is the total volume? The balance, which was 0.5, plus the washed RBC suspension. Pilay total karon?
1 ml, ma'am.
1.0. Okay. Ang role ni washed RBC, guys, the role of washed RBC is not as your serum antibody. This is just going to be your indicator system. The washed RBC is going to take the role of the indicator system. May tanong ako sa inyo. If you have a total volume of 1, if you want to compute for the dilution factor, kinsa man imong gamiton nga source of serum, the balance or this washed RBC? I said washed RBC is just the indicator system. So if you are going to be asked in the exam, Kinsa di ay source, if you want to compute for a dilution factor, kinsa maimuhang gamiton as source of your serum? The remaining diluted balance or this 0.5 ml nga wash RBC? Which among the two will you choose as your solute?
Balance, ma'am.
The balance. Nganong kaniman kay siya manggoy na ay serum. Diluted lang siya at 1:5 dilution. Right? So, compute now for the dilution factor of this new solution. Total volume of balance plus plus wash RBC is equal to 1.0. Divided by the balance, pila ang dilution initially?
2 po, ma'am.
1:2. Diba? Ang dilution factor is 2, therefore the dilution factor is the reciprocal of the dilution, it is 1:2. Okay, karon. Asa man gikan ning imuhang serum diri. It came from a previous dilution, right? What was the previous dilution?
1:5, ma'am.
1:5. So 1:2 times 1:5 is equal to 1:10. Nakuha?
Yes, ma'am.
Para ma'am, makuha atong tan-awon ang tube number 2. Sa tube number 2, you are going to add into this 1:10 diluent 0.5 ml of wash RBC. You have a total volume of 1. 1 divided by the remaining 0.5, you get an initial dilution of 1:2. Okay, 1 divided by 0.5, 2 man na. So 1:2 yung dilution diri. Okay, asa ko nangawat sa ako ang solute para diri. In what tube did I get my solute from for this dilution?
Tube 1 po, ma'am.
Did I? Nangayo ba ko?
Balance, ma'am. Balance na, ma'am.
Asa ko nangayo? Niya. Nangayo ko gyapon niya. Therefore, do I need to look back here or I need to look up to her?
Look up lang, ma'am, sa iyang own tube.
Add to the tube niya. So, as 1:2 times 1:10, nahimo siyang 1:20. Parehara na siya sa uban, guys. Ang sobra 0.5, gidungagan og 0.5, nahimong 1. 1 divided by 0.5, 1:2. Now, hindi ko na siyang 1:2 because ang prior history niya mauni kaning 1:20. So, 1:2 times 1:20, 1:40. Nagets, guys?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, sa final dilution, timan ini siya, kay naatay activity next week, nara ba ko tayo accreditor next week, kasi muling kuran unya ta, kaya halang alert ha, ang atong final dilution for the succeeding tubes, there is a final dilution after the use of washed RBC is going to be the dilution right above. Ayaw nagtanaw sa pika, so man ka nangayo. In the creation of the final dilution here, you never took anything anymore from the other one. Wala na ka nangayo. Ang imo na lang gitanaw ako asa kagikan sa una. So where did you come from when you were sourcing out the other one? Now, in next week's discussion, magstorya ko ninyo kabahig heterophil antibody test. Ingon ani na po niya siya, guys. But the RBC that I'm going to use is the sheep washed RBC, dili human RBC. But the principle will still remain the same. Ang imong final dilution must always be multiplied by the initial dilution with the previous dilution up above. Initial, previous, initial, previous, initial, previous, initial, previous. Dito, ang atong dilution here is initial nato na dilution diri is initial dilution of 1:2 must be taken from the previous. Kaya nangawat man ta diri. So 1:2 times 5. 1:2 times 10. 1:2 times 20. Okay? Sa diri sa serum dilution. But the dilution now, dili pag humani mo add sa ibang indicator system na washed RBC is going to look up right up on the test tube. Copy, guys? Okay, sige. Humana tag dilution. Pag humana tag dilution, okay, so I've washed 1% RBC, and the tubes dilution are now raised to the higher category. So from 1 is to 5, nahimo siya 1 is to 10, and so on. Okay? Cover with a Nesco film, that's like a thin paper cellulose sheet, cover it, mix it gently, guys. 3 times lang, ha? Dili shake, rattle, and roll, ha? Invert na 3 times. Ano, the gentle, good. Kuitan mo ng tumoy, and then you say 1, 2, 3. Okay? Then arrange them in a test tube wrap and put them covered para walay bacterial contamination. And put them in your refrigerator. Anong di man taganahan magbacterial anong di man taganahan magbacterial contamination? Because you might undergo what you call as pan-agglutination, which is agglutination of the red cell due to bacterial action. That is called the Huebner-Thompson-Friedenrich phenomenon. Okay? So, you refrigerate overnight. Pag-augma, immediately after removal from the refrigerator, hold its tube at horizontal position over a well-illuminated background, meaning na kay fluorescent lamp na gamiton as your background. White light na yung gamiton. How do you, what do you do? Siyempre, overnight, musettle ng imuhang red blood cell dito sa silong. Kaya imo man siyang stand in upright position. So what do you do? Gently mix it. 3 times na po. I-resuspend di mo siya. Anong ako man siyang i-resuspend? Because I might say it was again agglutination, but in fact, it was just a pseudo-agglutination. It could just be a rouleau formation or the piling up of red blood cells like stacks of coins because imo siyang stand in position or base, well, nalupra yun ibuhang mga antibodies na nagdikit-dikit siya. Okay, but that is not cold agglutination. Okay, so what do? You are going to examine it and check it out for agglutination. Nakita din siya mo, guys, imo anaon ng imuhang test tube. Kita ko kag particles, kung na ay particle. Okay, record asa man ka nagsugod og particle formation. In what dilution? Okay, here, asa man ka in this 1 is to 10 to 1 is to 5,120 dilution, asa man ka nakakita og dilution. Okay, let's say for example, you saw in tube 1. Will you report, the titer of my patient's antibodies is 1 is to 10 cold agglutination, cold agglutinins? No, you don't say that. Why? Because you need to examine the next and the next and the next tube. When will you stop? You will only stop when the next or the last tube that you have mixed will not show any agglutination anymore. Homogeneous solution na lamang siya nga red. Wala na kay particles nga nakita. That is your end point. Let's say, for example, at 1 is to 160, there is no more agglutination. Then the titer of the patient's cold agglutinin is 1 is to 80. Now, what is the relevance of knowing the quantitative amount of antibody is to assist the doctor in case magama siya og open heart surgery nimo, at least kabalo siya kung at what level pwedeng mo buto ang imuhang red blood cells. Okay? When exposed to cold environments. Okay, guys? So, you are going to examine them. Now, question, Ma'am, how will I know whether dili siya false positive? To know whether it is false positive, you need to do a validation. How do you validate? Remember, cold agglutinins are reversible. Okay, reversible. Muhimulay siya kung paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria siya, muhimulay siya kung ibutang nimo siya sa 37. Okay. Mauna siya, guys, nga imong tan-awon kung naara ba siya gihapon ang imong particulate o wala. after exposure to 37. Okay. To validate the test result, reversibility of the reaction is done by warming the tube for 1 hour at 37 degrees centigrade. If indeed it was a true agglutination, okay, if it was a true agglutination, it will show no heme agglutination anymore. No heme agglutination. Mawala ang mga particles, guys. Mubalik siya into a homogeneous solution kung tinuod siya nga cold agglutinin. Okay? But if ever dili ganing siya ano, dili ganing siya mawa, naragyap ng agglutination, that is a false agglutination. So question, yung ma'am, you said ma'am at 37 degrees centigrade, dili ra ko kinahanglang mahadlok nga mahimolize ang ako ang red blood cell. Ay, di ba, yung ma'am, at 37, mahimolize ang akong red blood cell kung tinood ko na ako cold agglutinin. It won't be hemolyzed because you are going to pre-treat your, you're going to pre-treat your sample before diluting it at 56 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes to remove the normal complement system components. Okay? Remove the normal complement system or the native complement system para kutob ka sa agglutination. You can really see the red blood cell agglutinating and you can see them return back into the solution if ever it is a true cold agglutination. Okay? So question before we stop. Guys.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Hmm?
Regarding sa desired concentration sa atong RCS, ma'am, natay murag range na need lang 6% to that nga kailangan i-prepare, ma'am, kay sa immunohema, ma'am, kay 2 to 5% ang murag ma'am, desired.
Okay. So you're asking kung naabatay set nga concentration of the red cells?
Yes po, ma'am.
Okay, yes. Naagitay set concentration. Sa procedure, it will really be stated in the procedure na ang imong damon is just how much percent. Plus ani. Naadyo ko i-indicate nga, prepare a 1% wash RBC. Prepare a 5%. Musulti yun ko, but in the true procedure for cold agglutinin, 1% ra atong gigamit. Given ni siya, guys. Given. Dili siya kanang depende sa gana. Dili. Did I answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Ang inyo yung i-remember, guys, is the formula. Yan ang atong formula for that will never change, no? To prepare your red cell suspension. Kaya ang type ako yung type of is 1%. Because in next week's discussion, I will still show this to you, but I'm gonna put in here 5% red cell suspension. Apply pa yun, 0.5 ba yun. Basta ako siyang indicate nila. All you need to do, guys, sa inyong formula is ilista na yung desired concentration. The desired concentration is the one that will be changed as well as the volume of your packed cell. Okay? Pila man imong gamitong packed cell. Ganahan kag 2, guys, mudako imong volume. Right? Example, sige. What is 2, guys? 2 times 100 divided by 1. Pila man?
100 po, ma'am.
100. Mangutana ko nimo. Kung saan man nimo ng 100 ml nga red cell suspension, ang imong ganing kailangan 4 ml raman. Diba manubra? Kani gani, we will be throwing away some red cell suspension here that is already not utilized. Because technically, if you want to add, how much is this all in all? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 ml ra gani oh. So mong labay ko og 5 ml nga red cell suspension. So kung magawa kag 100, the practicality of it all is not good. You are wasting energy, wasting your red cells. Okay? So, kani siya, you have to work within the required volume. Huwag naman nga pa-cute-cute po ka sa imong pixel volume to the point nga imong total volume dili kini mo magamit kay kulangan nilong ka para sa imong desired procedure. So tan-awon nimo how much is necessarily placed. So here in the formula, it says here, you are going to add 0.5 of it, 0.5 of this one to 8 test tubes. So, compute it. What is 0.5 times 8? 4 ml. Okay? For practicality sake, ayaw yung 0 in at 4. Guys, kay masayop niya ka, matumba, mayabo, at least apay na sobra nimo. So, munang mo-work ka within a volume nga, logically is good enough for your procedure to run smoothly. Okay? Sige, any more question, guys?
Excuse me, ma'am, kaning.
Yeah,
How
sure.
do we report the cold agglutination test,
You
ma'am?
report it in terms of titer. Ang titer reporting is based on the reciprocal of the dilution. Reciprocal of the dilution. So, going back to this here, this kanisha, this is the last dilution. No? After adding the red cell suspension, muna ni ang new dilution. Okay, this is the new dilution. Kanina, ang old dilution was this one. This is the earlier dilution, initial pa. This is just pure dilution of your NSS with its serum. But here, this is now the new dilution because this is now the remaining balance of your solution. The remaining balance of your solution here multiplied by, as affected by the addition of your 1% red cell suspension na tag 0.5 ml volume. So kani, pila may reciprocal ani. Halimbawa ni N ka guys sa number 5 tube number 5. Sabihin ka nga cold agglutinin titer is 160.
Excuse me, ma'am, wala ka naka-present og screen, ma'am.
Ha?
Wala ka naka-present og screen, ma'am.
Ay, sorry kaayo. Oh my God.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sorry guys. I get notice. Okay. Nakita na?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So your question was, aray, ulog akong air. Okay. Your question was, ma'am, how will I report the titer? So, ito yung, this one was the lumang titer, the lumang dilution. Luma ito kasi this was simply a serum dilution. Basically, serum dilution na yun siya. Here, this is now a new dilution because you are now adding your indicator system of 1% RBC suspension whose volume is 0.5 for every tube. Equal ang imuhang pag-expose nila niya. Thus creating a new dilution. Okay? So, ang imong 1:10, diba, dili na kakutob, paabot imong 1:20, wala the agglutination. Report the reciprocal of this dilution. You say 10 cold agglutinin antibody titer. Or diri ka ni end, 640. Wala na dilution, wala na agglutination diri. Diri ra kutob, diri ka 320 cold agglutinin titer. Kung wala ni agglutinate sa iya guys, after 37 degrees centigrade, that is when you report any of this. But if after 37 degrees centigrade, kani siya, pag humani mo check niya, udya, ga-agglutinate paghihapon, mingon ka, the patient has no cold agglutinin antibody. Because a true cold agglutinin antibody must always reverse when it is exposed at 37 degrees centigrade temperature. So agglutination is negative at 37 degrees centigrade. No agglutination at 37, but agglutination after refrigerating is a positive result. So in this illustration now, pila man akong i-report diri guys, kani siya. What's the titer of the antibodies?
160, ma'am.
160 cold agglutinin antibodies. Butangan apelyido ha, 160 cold agglutinin antibodies. Okay? Napay laing question? Pasabot mo ani guys kani? Kaptan ra?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay. Effort bitaw ko ani guys. Pasensya arag hiwi ako ang ano ha. Mga araw dili ba equal whatever. Kani siya guys, please note ha, I'm not discarding the 0.5 ml to here ha. By the term discard, akong pasabot ani is ako siyang gilabay. Di lang ko kabalo mo mag-aro nga palayo. Ang akong aro, basta kay palayo ni siya ilabay na ako ni siya. Ang sulod na sa number 8, number last test tube, whether it be a number 8 tube or in my case here sa illustration is number 11 tube, this is only NSS. And then guys, please ha, i-change ko ani, it should only be 0.5. 0.5. Kaya wag man ko ni adjud o serum at all. Now, question, unsa may function sa negative control? Nga, ma'am, nganong kadalagan mag-negative control? So that the next day, guys, when you want to compare a true agglutination from a no agglutination, always look at the picture of your negative control. The picture of your negative control will show you how it will look like kung tinuod na walay agglutination. Because negative man to siya. Negative siya in the sense na ang laman talaga dito is just NSS plus red blood cell. The NSS plus red blood cell, red blood cell pa rin siya nga gidili nga imong gibutangan og NSS magihutasan ra nimo. Okay? No more guys nga question? Na pa?
Sa katong ano ma'am, sample, unsa ganito ma'am, need siya ibutang sa cold temperature before sa warm para makakita ka sa reaction, tama ba ma'am or baliktad?
Kani man good siya, di ba? Ang end result nato diri, the titer is the highest dilution showing heme agglutination. And then ato siyang i-validate kung the heme agglutination is really because of cold agglutinins by putting it in a warm bath, a warm water bath. Okay? So magama kag water bath na itubig din ha, iset mo siya at 37 degrees centigrade. I-soak dito ang imuhang test tube nga nag-show of agglutination. Let's say for example, kani si 1:160. After the refrigeration, imo siyang gi-shake gently. But no matter how much you shake it gently, makakita gud ka nga naa particulate. So this is your highest titer. Ihulom siya sa water bath. Okay. After 1 hour, chika ha kung ang imong agglutinates nawala, ni-reverse ba siya? Okay? Ibalik ba siya into the circulation? Tanawa. Because normally, it will reverse back. Okay. Sa laboratory ni siya. But, in vivo, sa sulod sa lawas, no? Sa sulod sa lawas, kung sa'y matabo, kung muadto ka sa 37, what did we say? It will finish off the reaction, right? Tanawa itong test principle. Our test principle here says that normally, it may show a biphasic. It may show a biphasic reaction. Sa biphasic reaction, here, it will show a biphasic reaction. It will, typically, these issues in here will typically revert back kung naakaani niya by exposure to 37 degrees centigrade. It will retain some activity, and it is usually at 37 degrees centigrade wherein you activate the complement system and then you will lead to the damage of the circulating cells. Mahimulay siya. So technically, if ang imong result is press ani sa tugnaw, gibutang nimo siya sa 37, unsa expected result? Di ba mubuto siya? Muhimolize ni siya. Mahimolize. But the statement simply here says, no heme agglutination will occur. Okay, no heme agglutination will occur. Now, ngano hindi man siya mahimolize? Dapat yung siya nga, hemolysis will occur. Why is this not hemolysed? Because we are going to treat the serum. The serum, before we ever dilute it in step number 1, that is siya, when you say, add 0.2 ml of patient serum, ang atong serum, ato sa siyang i-inactivate para ang iyang native complement mawala. How do you inactivate gani in our rationale yesterday? How do you remove the native complement? You expose it in a water bath for 30 minutes. Pila ang temperature? 56 degrees centigrade, guys. To inactivate a complement, native complement sa imuhang serum or plasma, i-expose ang imong serum or plasma in a water bath na ang iyang temperature is 56. For how long? 30 minutes. Because guys, if you don't remove the complement system, remember a complement system finishes off a reaction. So, antigen plus antibody ay butho na niya. But complements cannot behave in a cold temperature. The complements can only behave accordingly when placed back at 37. Munang, it will finish off the reaction at 37. So technically, pagputang mo diri sa water bath, bubutoon ta siya. Hemolysis unta. But the result simply says, no heme agglutination. Mo revert back siya sa original. Nga naman, because of the absence of native complements here. Bakit? Saan pala pumunta si native complements sa aking serum? Eh, ako mo siyang gin-activate kanina o saan ako siya gitigyo. So, wala na to siya. You got it, guys?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So, always remember ha, na ang makapahimolize og dugo, is not the antigen-antibody interaction. It is not the immune complex that will make it burst. It is the complement that will make it burst. So in any laboratory procedure, pag nangangailangan ng interaction that is free from the native complement, tanggalin palagi si native complement by exposing your serum at 56 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes po. Remember that. Put that in your mind. Para when so many things have to be reviewed later on in the board exam, it will always stand out. Kantahan niyo siya sa CR, guys, malibang ka. 56 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes is to inactivate native complements. Okay? So, can we move on to another topic now? Napay question? Any more pa, guys, before we move to the next topic?
None
Wala na?
naman.
Wala na? Sige na, sige. Okay, you take a 10-minute break, guys. I'm going to prepare by PowerPoint for your next presentation.